Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to Hank's Think Tank. Man, we've been busy. We've had a lot going on, and I wish I could tell you that I've got a guest in today, but I don't. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of stuff that I wanted to cover. We're getting ready to go into early voting. Early voting actually starts tomorrow. And so there's some stuff I wanted to cover with you guys. I want to go over the propositions that are going to be on the ballot. And I also wanted to go over your choices for the candidates that we podcasted here for the EMCID election. But before we do that, really what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about involvement. You know, I'm really proud of all of the candidates that decided to get into this race. You know, it takes a lot to stick your neck out, and I know this because I did it back in 2020. It takes a lot to stick your neck out and decide you're going to run for something and be dedicated to it and try to do the best job you can. I've been following these candidates since day one, literally since the final day that they had to put in their application. I've talked to a lot of them. I've counseled with several of them. I've podcasted the majority. Actually, only one guy wasn't able to make it on the show. We had a big forum. We had about 140 people turn out for that forum. And we asked questions and let them make their speeches. And it's been a good thing. You know, it really has. I think it's been good for the community. I think it's been great for the voters. And I want to turn this thing around and get back to the point, at least in Montgomery County, where we vote based on knowledge that we have, not based on a slogan, not based on a name or a face or a recognizable individual. So I want to get down to the business of it, because that's the only way we can turn things around. But before we get into all this, I just wanted to say that, you know, I appreciate all the voters. Well, I've had overwhelming response. I've had a lot of questions from people, and people who didn't know certain things about voting or becoming involved. I've had a lot of individuals who want to now get involved, and they see the value of placing their vote and making it count, and the value of just giving a little bit back to your community. You know, Montgomery County is a great place to live, and especially East County. East County is wonderful, and I can't imagine myself living anywhere else. It's a good place to live, and we all need to just give a little bit. You know, if we all give a little bit, think of how much better we can make this community. All right, so let's get into the meat of this. One of the questions at the forum was, what is the duty of a board member? And you know, when I got this question, I think it was one of the ones that was texted to me. I thought to myself, that's just pretty basic. You know, I mean, that's kind of a weird question. But then I started thinking about it. I started thinking, you know, it's interesting because how can you elect someone if they don't really know what the actual duties of the job is? And I thought, well, maybe that is a pretty good question. So let's get into it. So we started looking. I did a little research myself, and I've kind of taken the definitions that I found and geared them a little bit more toward the entity that we speak of, which is EMCID. So I just wanted to go over what those duties actually are. So we'll just go over them point by point. All right. The duties of a board member, after elected, after you're there, the first one is to oversee the operations of the entity. And that may seem pretty obvious, but there's actually quite a lot involved in overseeing the operations of any entity, not to mention one that carries about an $18 million annual budget and has just a whole lot going on. I can imagine that this would be quite a difficult job actually and consume a fair amount of a person's time. So that first one again is to oversee the operations of the entity. All right, the second one, and this is the one that makes sense, and this is the one that counts right here. To ensure that your tax dollars are being spent not only wisely, but in the interest of the community that the entity represents. Now there we go. And that's very important. So a board member's obligation is to ensure that your tax dollars are being spent wisely, and also that they're spent in the interest of the community that EMCID represents. I think that's a good idea, because you don't want your tax dollars going somewhere else, or you don't want them being spent on things that don't make a difference and just unwisely. So that's another thing that a board member has to do. So you got to pick somebody who you think is wise in that area, who has financial responsibility, who understands complex budgets and things like that. So that's an important thing to consider when you're making your choice for a candidate. All right, moving on. A board member is to ensure that the entity provides the community it represents with adequate information regarding the operations of the entity, its financial affairs, development projects that affect the community, and long-term goals or projections proposed by the entity. I'll read that again one more time because it's a little bit complex, and we'll break it down in a minute. To ensure that the entity provides the community it represents with adequate information regarding the operations of the entity, its financial affairs, development projects that affect the community, and long-term goals or projections proposed by the entity. Now, folks, as far as I see it, this is just transparency. So a board member's job is to ensure that the entity provides the community it represents with adequate information. So are they the ones that are supposed to provide this information? No, I don't think so. But they're in charge of making sure that the entity does provide this information. And it's information about what? Well, about the operations, about their financial affairs, about development projects that affect the community, and about long-term goals. Because you definitely want to see what a company or an entity's long-term goals are. You want to know, where are we going? What are we doing? And how are we going to get there? So this is all information that I think a board member is responsible for A, knowing, B, being able to properly disseminate, and C, ensuring that that entity provides that information. So that's a big job for a board member. It's a good deal. So you got to make sure, again, when you're thinking about who you're going to vote for, that this individual has the ability to do this, that they themselves have been transparent, that they themselves understand how to disseminate information, how to look at things and make sure that that information gets out to the community. It's important, because in the long run, 100% of the money that goes to EMCID, it's tax dollars. I mean, it is. When you go buy something, a portion of the sales tax that you pay goes to EMCID, and that's where they get their funding. They don't get it anywhere else. They get it from our tax dollars spent in this area, in their footprint. So you want to make sure that you are going to hire a board member by voting for them that has the ability to do these things. All right, moving forward. And I like this one, and I hadn't thought about this before, but I knew it was one of their responsibilities, but it just wasn't laid out in this fashion, so I think this is good. To act as a liaison between the community and the entity to ensure that proper oversight is provided and the wishes of the community are relayed back to the entity it represents. And I hadn't considered that, really not in this fashion before, but really a board member is a liaison. They are the middleman between the community and the entity. So they kind of represent both. They stand in the middle and they kind of represent both. They have to ensure that the entity understands what the community's wishes are, and they have to be able to relay what's going on back to the community, what the entity's operations are. It's great. I want to read it one more time because it really made sense to me when I read it. To act as a liaison between the community and the entity to ensure that proper oversight is provided and the wishes of the community are relayed to the entity that it represents. Man, that's awesome. So if we can get board members that will relay our wishes back to the entity and they can ensure proper oversight, we got it, man. We're moving forward. That's a great thing. It's beautiful. I love it. So think about that also when you're thinking about who you're going to vote for. All right. And then we're moving forward. We only have a few more of these. I don't want to bore you guys with all this stuff, but I found it to be kind of fascinating because it delineated exactly what those duties should be. And when you know that and you understand that, it helps you to make a final decision on who you're going to cast your ballot for. All right, moving forward. To contemplate and accept budgets submitted by the entity and to assist in the adjustment of budget line items, ensuring solvency and fiduciary responsibility. Now, this is cool. And this is where it kind of gets to the meat of the thing. So you need a board member who can contemplate a budget. So somebody who knows how to read a budget, somebody who understands the difference between debits and credits, where expenditures go, where their money comes from, who can disseminate that information. And budgets are complicated. They really are. To give you an idea, I recently viewed a budget from another entity that I'm kind of interested in. And their budget is 620 pages long. It's enormous. It's astronomical. And it takes a lot of time to be able to figure that information out in your mind and know what's going on. But what the board member's responsibility is to assist them in making adjustments to line items, ensuring their solvency. In other words, making sure they don't have too much debt or that they spend more than they earn. And fiduciary responsibility. And fiduciary responsibility means a responsibility to you and me, the voters, the taxpayers, the guys who fund them. So they have a responsibility to us. And they have a legal responsibility. That's where the word fiduciary comes in. So make sure that, again, when you're going to vote for an individual, that they can understand and contemplate a budget, and they can assist in making adjustments on budget line items. Tough job. You need a smart person to be able to do that. So think about that when you're casting your ballot as well. All right, I think we're at the final part of it here. To assist the entity in creating, updating, and enforcing corporate policies with regard to every aspect of the entity. And now this is another big thing. So policy making can sometimes be really difficult to do because of everything that's going on within a company, because of the way they operate. So it's hard for them. And then some of these policies can be several hundred pages thick already. So when they're getting voted in, they're going to have to learn what all these policies are and then be able to understand that information and make adjustments as time moves forward, because you're always going to need to make adjustments to corporate policy. So I'm going to read it one more time. To assist the entity in creating, updating, and enforcing corporate policy with regards to every aspect of the entity. So that's company policies on the way they work, employee policies. I mean, you name it, everything all the way down to medical benefits, the way they spend their money, the whole ball of wax. And policy is a big deal. So you want somebody who can understand that, who can help to write it, who can help to enforce it, and get that information also back to the community again. All right, and I'm moving forward. If I can get past this page. Yeah, there it is. All right. Okay, so just to wrap it up, and this puts it all together. A board member can be considered as a policing agent for the entity, ensuring that they do their job and that the interests of the community are constantly represented. So that's kind of what board members do. They, I wouldn't really call them cops for the deal. I don't know where the policing agents came up, but it does make sense. Board members are considered as policing agents for the entity. So, and they ensure that they do their job and that the interests of the community are represented. So you got to make sure when you're voting, guys, that you cover all this stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot. I know it's a lot, but you can go back and watch a little bit more of these definitions to kind of figure it out and see if your guy or gal, whoever you're thinking about voting for, fits all those, because it's important. And this is a board member's responsibility. I don't care if it's a board member for EMCID, a board member for the fire department, a board member for XYZ Corporation. It doesn't matter. If you're a board member, that's what your responsibilities are. And you want people who are going to follow those responsibilities and not shirk those responsibilities, and ensure that, that all this is in line with what the community wants, because at the end of the day, we're the guys that are funding this corporation. We're the guys that are putting our money in their pocket to make sure they spend it wisely and they give us what we need, and they hear us too, because we do have a voice, every last one of us. If you've casted your ballot, you got a voice. If you've spent money here and you've paid sales taxes, you got a voice. Exercise that voice and make sure you're heard. I'm hoping, really I am, for an overwhelming turnout, not only for early voting, but on voting day itself, which is May 7th. I'm hoping for that. I want to see this community come out because I want EMCID to know that we support them. We do. We support them. We support their operations. We support their programs. We support what's going on. I want them to know and understand that we've created something here and we're behind them. We just need to ensure that we put the right people on the board so things continue to run smoothly. Not that much to ask. I know it's a shakeup for the company itself, that they got to train new people and get new people to understand what their policies are, what their budget is. It's a long learning curve. I got it. I get it. But I want them to know that the community is here. We're behind them. We understand what it is they do. We understand why they do it. And we're here to help you. And the only way to do that is by coming out in force and casting your ballot and let them know. The other thing is, these candidates have worked tirelessly. And I mean, again, I've talked to a bunch of them. They've really worked hard at their campaign, and they deserve you to come out and vote. Even if you're not voting for that particular individual, just the fact that you're making the effort makes them feel like what they've done was worth it. The last thing we want to do in this country, for sure, is start getting it to the point to where people don't want to run anymore because they don't feel like it's worth it. So let's come out in force, man. I want people there. I want this to be the biggest turnout that this election has ever seen for this small local election. Let's make it happen. I mean, we can do it. All right. So, guys, I didn't want you to go to the ballot without all the information. So what I wanted to do was cover the two propositions that we have on the ballot. And here's the thing about propositions. If there's not an explanation that you can get, you have to read this stuff really slow, because the way they word it, and I've seen this more than once, is that they'll word it to where you think you're supposed to vote yes, but you actually are supposed to vote no. You know what I mean? Depending on what you want. So you got to be careful on the way that these things are termed. And I'm really not going to read the whole proposition 1 or 2 because they're a bit lengthy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you with a brief explanation of what these propositions mean. And if you feel like voting for them or against them, when you get to the ballot, you can do it. But at least you'll have a tiny bit of education. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a JPEG. I'm going to insert it into this video. So if you guys do want to read the full proposition, and it's good to do it because it gets you used to reading the type of information that these guys write. A lot of this stuff goes through attorneys and such, and it's laid out pretty complicated. So it can be hard, even for people with master's degrees, to figure this stuff out sometime. And I've talked with several of our state legislators about that, and they all agree, hey, it is what it is, but it's got to be that way. So the explanations are the better way to go. So proposition number 1. Okay, this proposition will benefit individuals with an over 65 or disabled exemption on their homestead. So if you are 65 or older and or you are disabled and you have that exemption already on your homestead, this proposition is going to benefit you by reducing your ad valorem taxes on the school portion thereof. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but as far as I can tell, for me at least, it seems like a good thing. Now, fortunately, I'm not over 65 or disabled, so I don't have that particular exemption, but I'll eventually get there. And when I do, I'd like to have that little bit of a tax break. Is it going to make a big, big difference? I don't think so, but it's going to make a difference to some, especially those individuals that are on a fixed income. So it sounds like a good thing to me, but I'm not telling you which way to vote on it. If there's somebody out there who knows more about this particular proposition, hey, let me know down low in the comments, or send me a text or whatever and help me to figure this thing out, because trying to get this information can sometimes be tough, but I tried. All right, so Proposition 2. Proposition 2 will increase the homestead exemption by $15,000. So currently the homestead exemption is $25,000. They want to raise it to $40,000. And this exemption is for ad valorem taxes for school purposes. So it's going to be a bit of a break because it's going to raise your exemption some. Is it going to make that big of a difference? Maybe not, but it'll make a difference. It will give us some relief on property taxes, and I know everybody's really suffering with that. So as far as I can tell, both Proposition 1 and 2 appear on the front end to be a good thing. So again, if somebody's got more information on this and I'm wrong about it, let me know. But at least now you know what they are. Prop 1 is for people 65 or older with an exemption along with a disabled exemption on their homestead. And Prop 2 basically is just going to raise that homestead by $15,000 to $40,000. So those both seem like good things. All right, guys, go to the polls. Early voting starts tomorrow. There's several polling locations. Bull Salis Park is one, and I'm sure you can make a call. There's a website. It's Montgomery County Elections you can go to, and you can find out what the polling locations are. Please make a wise choice. Don't go there. I mean, if you haven't made a decision, don't go to the polls. Don't make your decision at the ballot box. It's not a good way to vote. You're basically making a big mistake doing that. Go to the polls. Again, the videos are up for every one of these candidates, save one, and you can go there and you can watch those podcasts. They're about 30 minutes long on the average, and it's worth the time. You don't have to watch every one, but you can kind of get an idea pretty quickly on who you think the right individual is to vote in this particular election. So go vote. Be a part of it, man. It's worth it. You're helping our democratic process to stay alive. You're keeping America great. And a great America starts right here in East Montgomery County. It doesn't start in D.C. There's nothing we can do about what's going on in D.C. here in East County. But there is a lot you can do, starting with this particular election. And we're going to follow it through. I'll probably end up doing another show, a final, on the results and how those results came down. But guys, the response that I have had from this community has been overwhelming, man. I don't know how to thank you. I really don't. It's been good. I appreciate it. And my reason for doing all this is you. I want the average voter to get their power back, bottom line. I want to take it from the big entities that are out there that have had it for a while. I want to give it back to the voter. I want you guys to understand how powerful your vote really is. When you get out there and vote, it makes a difference, man. It makes a big difference in your community, in your life, and eventually at your home. So vote on the right guys. Get it done. Now, I've given you the definitions of what a board member's supposed to do. So check it out and, make it happen. May 7th, we're all going to know. So we're going to figure it out on May 7th. And I think these guys will be inducted shortly after that. Candidates, I'm proud of you. Y'all have all stepped up, done what you could to run a good campaign. And I've really seen some amazing, amazing work out there by these candidates. They've worked hard. They've worked tirelessly. Whether they get elected or not, kudos to you for sticking your neck out and being a part of the democratic process. And I hope it won't end for you if you don't get elected. If you don't get elected, try again, man. Have a voice in this community. Make it happen. Well, guys, I got some good stuff in the bucket, and we got some good shows coming up. Our last show was a little bit on critical race theory. I think we're going to continue that, but from the other end of the spectrum, and I'm looking to have somebody on. In addition, I've got some more stuff about the fire department that's coming up, and that's going to be an interesting show. We got a little bit more stuff on science, and so I think it's going to be good. We've got some good stuff in the bucket, and just look forward to doing it. along with some great music coming up too. And that always makes me happy. So for Hank Vat, I'm Hank Vat. That sounded funny, didn't it? But I don't have anybody sitting here. So anyway, have a good one, guys. I look forward to seeing you out at the polls. I'm going to visit a couple of times throughout the week. And vote, vote, vote. Make it happen. All right, we're out.